And we are joined by Louis Panzer, the executive director of the North Carolina 811, which means you need to call before you dig. So here are some of the questions that folks are putting in. Will they locate on private property as well as public property?
That's a great question. So the facilities that they're going to mark are the ones that they own. So that means they consider the facilities to be yours if once they leave a point of demarcation, whether it's your water meter and comes to your house, those are considered private facilities. Now, we do have a list on our website of providers of private line locators. And there are circumstances, and it doesn't matter if you're in Liberty or Archer or Greensboro, but let's say you've got a power pole or a light pole that you're running power to that's solely contained on your property. You're going to want to go ahead and get a private line locator to make sure there's nothing in conflict with that. Uh, all kinds of excavation, any kind of excavation, whether it's a basketball pole or a mailbox, really pretty much anytime you're going to dig and disturb the earth, it has that requirement attached to it to go ahead and notify us, and it is a legal requirement.
Okay, anytime, I love that you use the mailbox to the basketball hoop, which maybe they wouldn't have thought about because they're not like digging in for a tree or something like that. In fact, this person followed up with this question: do I have to call if I'm not digging very far down? Is there a certain amount of feet?
Yeah, so as I was mentioning earlier, we were very cautious to let people know that you really can't rely on depth, because there's so many different things that can change where that facility is in relation to the surface. Also, there may be a circumstance where somebody's bringing internet to your house, for example, and they've got what they call a drop line. It's just laying there connected to get the service to your home, and it may be laying just under the grass or on the surface because they haven't fully buried it yet. So never rely on depth, especially as it relates to power and gas, because those are the most personally risky that you don't want to come into contact with those things.
So you said that this was a law for you to be able to call before you dig. So could you actually get in trouble for not calling before you dig?
Yeah, the biggest problem, and I think one of the questions may have alluded to this, was who's responsible? Can you be fined or found, to be financially liable if you damage something without calling? And the answer is yes. The law requires that all excavation um, be preceded by this contact with 811 and waiting the full time, proceeding with care. If you've done all those steps, and then you followed those steps of the law, then you're in good shape. But if you didn't call, and you inadvertently cut something, you can be sure that the provider will be coming back to you to pay for the time to replace the actual line itself. So yeah, you can be found. And also, there's an enforcement action that can be taken if there's a violation of the act. It's a complaint-based system, but there's an underground damage prevention review board that exists in North Carolina, and we have seen cases where maybe it's a neighbor telling on another neighbor who saw them digging without calling, and they cut their line, for example. They could file a report, a violation for that, and the result of that could be training, or you can actually be fined up to $2,500 per violation.
Okay, so you could be fined and you could actually be on the hook for how much it costs them to bring a crew out to fix that damage.
Absolutely, and you'd be surprised how quickly that racks up. And it just depends, especially now with fiber. It used to be copper was pretty easy to splice and repair and that kind of thing, but now that we're talking about high-speed fiber, they have to do it in sections, so you're going to have to pay for that replaced section. Bottom line is, you just don't want to be there. You don't want to do that. There's just no reason to. 811 is free. And anybody doing work for you on your property knows about this, or should if they're a professional, and they should be following those rules as well, and keeping you safe and keeping all those facilities in the ground protected.
Okay, and for those people, because they may have caught the second half of all of this interview, when you do call 811, what is the time frame on this? Like, if you want to dig on Saturday, when do you have to be calling in to make sure all these things get marked correctly?
Yeah, so you need to allow for 3 full business days. That doesn't include weekends or holidays. You need to allow that period of time before to notify us, so that that gives the utilities that period of time to be able to come out and mark. So if you were to work on a Saturday, you call in Monday, then Tuesday. Well, actually, you would call in Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Those would be your 3 full days, and then you could start on Saturday. Unless there's a holiday that lands in there. We follow the state holiday schedule as far as that goes. But again, plan your work your plan, as they say, and notify us, and we'll try to keep those things sending power and internet to your home and water and everything else that you need.
That's right. Everybody wants all of their utilities, and they don't want any kind of mess up with that. That is for sure.
Absolutely.
All right, and it's free, NC 811. You can just dial 811. Thank you so much for your time, your expertise. We appreciate it. We want to keep everybody safe. If you missed any of this, got a question, we're going to be posting this interview so you can watch it as well and get those questions answered again. It's going to be in the Who Wants to Know section of the website.